Hey guys, what's going on? This is Lukas here and welcome to my channel, and if you're a subscriber, welcome back. I have a couple of videos that I'm working on, but they're taking longer than expected, so I decided to make this video because I want some thoughts to be just out there in the open in case they could help somebody. One of the videos I'm working on has to do with storytelling and improv. I want to keep that one a secret because I have some good ideas about that, I think. And then the second one was a review of this book, Brain Lock by Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz, and it's something that I've been reading through. I'm about a fourth of the way through it. It's about OCD, and it's a fascinating read. This is the 20th anniversary edition, and so yeah, that was quite a while ago, but it's still really good. I am loving what I'm reading so far, and it's been very insightful. And on the topic of OCD, that's what I want to talk about today. Disclaimer, I am not a medical professional. I am just a person. If you have any questions that relate to mental unwellness, mental disorders, anything like that, please direct them to your primary care physician and your network of doctors. That being said, I do suffer from OCD myself, so I want to put my insights out there in case they might be of some benefit to you. I hope they are. I hope that makes sense. Another reason I wanted to make this video was because there's a lot of people who think that OCD is trendy and OCD is quirky, but a quirk is not OCD, you know? If you have, like, let's say, like you want to stack your papers a certain way, or you're just a perfectionist, or, you know, you like cleaning things, that's not OCD. It's just, you know, it's just you like those things, you like being neat. You might be high in trait neuroticism or in all manner of things, but OCD is something different, and I'm going to get into it as best as I can. So, jumping right into it, right off the bat, OCD, as the name suggests, is categorized into two different parts. That's the obsession and the compulsion. The obsession is sort of like a relentless thought, a thought that produces fear and anxiety in you, something that you don't like, something that feels uncomfortable and motivates you negatively. And oftentimes obsessions are things that you can't shake on your own or are really hard to shake on your own. So you aim to solve that by enlisting in the help of a behavior. And that leads into the compulsive part of obsessive compulsive disorder. Compulsions are behaviors, often ritualized, that you take in order to quell your fears and anxieties and in order to get rid of these intrusive thoughts. Get rid of these unwanted feelings of fear and anxiety and hopelessness and what have you. It's all about an attempt to sedate yourself, an attempt to get back to baseline. So the reason I say often ritualized is because it's not always so clear-cut, so cut and dry. Sometimes you'll say, okay, I want to check something 33 times, right? But oftentimes it's like, I want to check something until it feels right. I have a specific way that I check something, but it doesn't necessarily have a benchmark or a milestone that I need to reach. It's just I know I need to do this, whatever this is, a lot. And it's important to note the difference between OCD and OCPD. OCPD is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And basically, from what I understand, even though I don't know too much about it, I think the difference between the two is that with OCD, the thoughts cause you great distress and they cause you anxiety, and you often are aware of how ridiculous these thoughts are, but it still negatively motivates you in a certain way. Whereas with obsessive compulsive personality disorder, you still have this negative motivation, but you don't think of it necessarily as a bad thing. It's sort of like more part of your personality where you feel like, yeah, it's in the right. I think everybody should check the stove 10 times. Or I think everybody should wash their hands in 20 different segments for 15 minutes straight, right? It doesn't cause them, like, major duress in the same way that regular obsessive compulsive disorder does. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just how I understand it right now. So, what does OCD look like? Well, it's nothing like what you see in the movies or what you see on TikTok or Instagram, you know, all these things that are color-coded, you know, things that are perfectly aligned, being super clean, you know, that's just sort of like the, I want to say that's like the Hollywood version of OCD. That's like a simulacrum, but it's not the thing in itself, if that makes sense. What OCD actually is, sitting there at the stove looking at the lights to make sure that they're off, and even though you visually see that the lights are off, your mind tells you they're not. That's what OCD is like. Same thing if you're washing your hands. If you have OCD, there's this deep feeling of stress in you, and you feel like a catastrophe is going to happen if you don't wash your hands. You're going to get diseased, you're going to cause other people to catch disease. In fact, not to spoil anything, but in the Brain Lock book that I'm currently reading through, there are case studies based around, I believe they're pseudonyms, I don't think they use real names, but they're people who have OCD in this doctor's practice, and they have an all manner of things, whether it's, thinking that bumping up against a desk at work is going to cause a paperclip to fly into a coffee, and that coffee is going to be drank, and then the person drinking the coffee is going to choke on the paperclip. That's how crazy some of these obsessions can get. And one thing that's very important to understand is that it's not based on logic, and you cannot use logic to solve it. Because you can tell yourself over and over again the statistics of what you're doing. You can tell yourself how ridiculous it is. You can tell yourself that you felt with your senses that things were right. You can do that until the cows come home, and yet still, your brain's going to be like, but what if you're wrong? What if you're a dumbass? And so what you see on Instagram, what you see on TikTok, that's more in the lines of OCPD, but it's still not really OCPD. It's just sort of perfectionism and a sense of neatness and a sense of wanting things to be organized and together, which I think is a natural thing that many people feel, The main differentiation I see is that with OCD and OCPD, it's like there's a negative motivation towards something. It's not like, oh, hey, I am bothered by that, so I'm just like, I like things neat, I like things organized, let's do that. That's normal to be motivated by that sort of thing. Even before I had OCD, I got OCD basically when I was 16, I want to say, and before then, I was very neat. I was a neat and organized person. I liked having things stacked well, and I liked having things sorted and organized and color-coded and things like that, but it was never a cause of distress. It was never something that was repeated. It was never something that I sought to remove from my head. And so, the difference is tremendous, and I know the difference because, I do have a bit of a contamination obsession. So if I'm in the bathroom, it's like I have to wash my hands in a very specific way, otherwise they feel dirty. Otherwise they feel like I'm going to contaminate myself. I'm going to contaminate my computer. My computer is going to get some backwards contamination to me, that sort of thing. So that's basically the difference between the Hollywood version of what people think is OCD and the OCD itself. And so what other things can OCD present itself as? Well, some of the obsessions the obsessions can pretty much stretch as far as your imagination can go. If it's something that you can feel unsure about, something you foresee has a negative consequence, and something you foresee has a behavior which could quell that negative consequence, then that could be part of OCD. So there are millions of things you could think about. And they go into every category you can imagine. So that's why when people think of OCD as just like a contamination thing, I feel like people are misguided, because only half the time is it contamination. At least in my experience and with other people I've talked to about their OCD and how they work with it, it seems like only half of it has to do with contamination. But at the end of the day, it has to do with a bad result or a bad outcome. So you have things like blasphemy if you're a religious person. You have things like OCD about harming, if you have problems with kitchen knives and whatever. You have OCD about contamination if you're washing your hands. You have OCD about, there is OCD about aligning things and color coding and all that sort of stuff. But the main thing is is there a catastrophe that will happen if you don't do that? Somebody with OCD might say, I really need this to be aligned, otherwise it's going to fall and it's going to break this, or it's going to, my house is going to get destroyed, or it's going to get flooded, or something like that. There's generally a big, spectacular result that you're thinking of that will happen if you don't do this specific compulsion. And then another thing is just right OCD. And that means that you things don't feel good. They have to feel a specific way. Like if you click a switch and it doesn't click a certain way, then you'll do it over and over again until you think that you hear that sound or you feel that. Or like if you're handwriting and you really, really, really need to keep it in line and really need to keep it like steady throughout, you'll feel like this deep guttural sort of response if you don't do that compulsion. The best way I can explain it to somebody who doesn't have it is that when you have your obsessions and you feel the need to act on them, it feels as though you're in like a swimming pool and you go under the water and you're holding your breath. And your body gives you that like natural feeling of like, I need air, I need air, I need air, that sort of thing. That's what it feels like, at least for me. It feels like that sort of, that urgency that kicks you into action. So yeah, that's all well and good. Doom and gloom. I don't mean to be doom and gloom. There's definitely ways to conquer this. There's tons of treatment options. And like I said, please reach out to your healthcare professionals and see what can be done for you as far as medications go and as far as psychological techniques go. On that note, here's some quick tips that I have found recently and over the years that have helped me, and I hope they can help you too. I'm still working on some of these, but I think that they are just generally good. One of them is mindfulness. Mindfulness is key because a lot of times, especially if you're deep in the weeds when it comes to OCD, you don't know what your triggers are always. You know that there are tons of them, but once they start piling on, it's hard to delineate any specific one. So one thing I can think of is to be mindful of what you're doing. And so if you know that you're going to be in a location or in a space where your obsessions are going to be bothering you, then I would say before you do that, take 5 minutes, close your eyes, and breathe. And just breathe in, breathe out. Try not to think of anything, try to empty your mind, and just feel what it feels like to be you. What it feels like to feel, what it feels like to smell, what it feels like to breathe. And after focusing on that for 5 or 10 minutes, you'll be more attuned to your triggers. So even though it might not lessen the severity of your triggers right away, it will let you know which ones are more severe than others and exactly which thing you hope to accomplish when you do a compulsion. Another thing is journaling. If you can't be expected to keep everything in your head and to know it and to be like galaxy brained and know exactly what's going on every second of every day, and you can't be expected to remember that. No one can. So what I would suggest is when you have a specific trigger, something that you don't typically think about, journal it, write it down, and just keep track of your progress. Because I'm reading through this brain lock book, and one of the things I noted of specific importance was that it's hard to remember and it's easy to forget when you overcome something. Your positive progress in a certain direction. It's much easier to focus on the negative. And so when you have it written down, it's what one of the patients in the stories calls his rational mind. His journal is his rational mind because it lets you know exactly what's happening, not what you think is happening based on your anxiety and your stress. And so journaling would be the second step I would suggest to you guys. And the final step would be just small steps, right? You don't want to beat yourself up. You don't want to regress. You don't want to be too hard on yourself. Work within, your reach, and don't beat yourself up. I promise you it'll make you feel better if you don't. We're all in this together, and we aren't perfect. So make sure you work in small steps. And that ties into my last tip, which is be kind to yourself. Because being kind costs nothing, and if you're anything like me, you're often your biggest bully. You're often the person who ribs you the most. You're often the person who beats you up the most. So be kind to yourself. Take a step back. Compliment yourself on your progress. Go with the flow. Accept your flaws and your gifts and just move forward with that. Regardless of how bad of a day you're having, it doesn't soil your progress and it doesn't soil your journey. So please remember that. Please be kind to yourself. But that's all, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this was insightful to some of you who are either going through some obsessive compulsive struggles, or if you know somebody who does go through those struggles, I hope this helps you in understanding them better. But yeah, stay tuned for a couple more videos. I'm excited to get those out. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day and are staying safe. This is Lucas, and I'll catch you later.